He was walking home, the evening quiet around him. She was tending her garden, humming softly, unaware of the eyes watching from the street. Then, in an instant, their ordinary lives shattered, hands cuffed, voices raised, and a world that promised. Safety seemed to vanish. But what happened next wasn't just about them. It sent shockwaves through the entire neighborhood. How could a simple walk, a quiet evening, turn into a moment that exposed a truth no one could ignore? It was just another calm evening in their quiet neighborhood. Harold and Mabel had lived there for decades, known by neighbors as kind, gentle, and always ready with a smile. Harold had just returned from the grocery store, bags in hand, while Mabel tended the last blooms of her garden, the sun dipping low behind the rooftops. Their lives were simple but full, shared routines, warm greetings, and the comfort of a community that had watched them grow old together. Across the street, a patrol car rolled slowly, its presence unnoticed at first. Harold waved to a familiar neighbor. Mabel waved back from the porch, and for a fleeting moment the world felt ordinary, safe, familiar. But the calm carried a false sense of security. Something shifted in the air, a tension neither of them could name. What began as an ordinary evening was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. The patrol car slowed, a shadow of intent behind the tinted windows, and Harold felt a chill. This familiar street, the one that held decades of memories, was about to become the stage for an injustice that would shock not just them, but everyone who knew their story. Harold noticed the patrol car slow to a stop across the street. At first he thought it was routine, another neighborly check. But then the officer stepped out, eyes fixed, expression unreadable. Mabel's hands froze in the soil, her heart quickening as she watched him approach. There were no words exchanged at first, just a heavy silence that pressed down on the quiet neighborhood. "Excuse me, sir," the officer began, though the tone carried neither courtesy nor warmth. Harold's mind raced. He had done nothing wrong, yet an instinctive unease settled over him. The officer's partner moved around the car, blocking any easy path. Mabel stepped closer, protective, her voice steady but firm. "He's done nothing." Seconds stretched. The air thickened with tension. Without warning, the officer grabbed Harold's arm and pressed the cold steel of handcuffs around his wrists. Shock anchored him in place. Mabel reached out, but the other officer took hold of her too, restraining her with equal force. Confusion turned to fear. The neighbors, who had been watching from windows and porches, began whispering to one another, sensing the injustice unfolding. The officer's motives remained unclear, but the message was brutally obvious. Authority, unchecked, wielded against two innocent elderly neighbors. Whispers grew into murmurs, then voices. People stepped onto their lawns, phones raised, documenting. Every moment, a crowd began forming, the neighborhood's disbelief turning into righteous anger. The serenity of decades in one street shattered under the weight of a single, cruel act. Every second felt endless. Harold's heart pounded in rhythm with the rising tension around him. Mabel's grip on his hand was the only anchor in the chaos. Eyes met across the street, neighbors silently communicating their refusal to accept what was happening. The small cluster of officers now faced a swelling, determined community, and for the first time, the imbalance of power seemed less certain. Then came the pivotal moment, the one that would mark this evening forever. The crowd stepped forward together, voices rising in unison, demanding justice, demanding release, refusing to be ignored. The officers hesitated, caught between the rules they enforced and the humanity confronting them. This wasn't just a personal injustice anymore. It had become a test of a community's will, and the tension reached a breaking point. The officer's grip tightened on Harold's arm, his voice sharp and unyielding. "Step back!" he barked, but the crowd didn't. Phones recorded every move, eyes locked on the unfolding confrontation. Mabel struggled to stay calm, her chest heaving, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. They had done nothing wrong, nothing at all, yet here they were, restrained in their own neighborhood. Tension crackled through the air like electricity. Neighbors stepped closer, forming a human shield around the elderly couple. "Let them go!" someone shouted. Others joined, their voices rising, united in outrage. The officers exchanged glances, a brief hesitation betraying uncertainty. The power that had seemed absolute was suddenly tested. Harold's mind raced. He remembered every story, every warning, every injustice he'd ever heard about people like him. Yet as he looked at the faces around him, friends, neighbors, strangers, something shifted. This wasn't just about fear anymore. It was about courage, about standing up when silence would have been easier. The officers barked orders, trying to regain control, but the neighborhood refused to back down. A single decisive moment hung in the balance. Would authority crush their voices, or would collective defiance force a reckoning? In the tense pause, the community's resolve became palpable, a living, breathing force that seemed to shake the very street itself. Finally, one officer hesitated, then another. The handcuffs that had felt like chains of despair began to feel like the last barrier between oppression and justice. And then, in a moment that would be retold for years, the officers released Harold. And Mabel, stepping back into the patrol car, faces grim as the crowd erupted in relief and quiet triumph. In that instant, the ordinary street transformed into a battleground for dignity and justice. Harold and Mabel were free, but the weight of what had just occurred, fear, courage, collective defiance, lingered in every heart. And one thought remained unspoken, yet undeniable. Sometimes, standing together can force the world to see the truth it has long ignored. Harold and Mabel stood on their porch, hands still trembling, hearts still racing, as the crowd slowly dispersed. The street returned to its quiet rhythm, but nothing felt the same. Neighbors exchanged nods, words unnecessary. What had happened was understood, shared, and imprinted in everyone's memory. For Harold and Mabel, the evening left scars deeper than bruises. The fear, humiliation, and shock would linger, reminders of a world where injustice could strike at any moment, even in the place you call home. Yet there was also an undeniable sense of hope, born from the courage of those who refused to stay silent. A community had shown that standing together could challenge the powerful, that ordinary people could rewrite the narrative of fear into one of resilience. The incident spread beyond the neighborhood. Phones had captured every moment, videos shared across social media, conversations ignited about racial injustice, authority, and accountability. People from outside their street saw what the community already knew. A small act of defiance could ripple into something far greater, inspiring reflection, conversation, and action. Harold and Mabel returned to their daily routines, forever changed. Every step on familiar sidewalks reminded them of that night, the fragility of safety, the strength of unity. They realized that justice wasn't always immediate, and change didn't always come easily. But courage, compassion, and collective action could alter the course of even the darkest moments. And so, the story of one ordinary evening became a testament to resilience and vigilance. A question lingered in every mind. How many times will communities need to rise before the world truly sees the value of standing together against injustice? This wasn't just Harold and Mabel's story. It was the story of countless others, a call to witness, reflect, and act. The message was clear: silence allows injustice to persist, but unity can change everything.